Then you have, you know, them making these bad decisions. And it's sad to me because children are only responsible for themselves to a certain extent. And you can argue till you're blue in the face about it, but it starts at home. I think children are unruly. I have a 16-year-old, and Lord knows it is a 24/7 job. It is not easy. It is not easy. It is not easy. But we have to be just as consistent as our children are. I think parents throw in the towel too quick. And I get it. Parents are busy trying to pay bills. Like right now, we're in the midst of a pandemic. We have a lot going on. But I think consistency is key with these kids. I think parents give up way too soon on our children. I think that and I also feel like there are not enough resources in our community. Just like what the young man said, Mr. Perry, we need to instill the 18-year-olds now, we need to be pushing, pumping, let's vote. We need to see more people that look like us, ethnic, that have the same type of hair that I have, sitting in these positions of superior positions, making the decisions. I don't expect a white person that grew up with a silver spoon to be able to completely to relate to me, but I also am in favor of diversity. I think that is the only way, not just as a community, but socially, everybody, for us to get inclusive. We need to get together. I don't think that, I don't disregard that I can't learn anything from a white person, but the condition that we're in right now, we need to stick together. We need to push voting. And I stand on mental illness because I just really feel like it's overlooked. Children are misdiagnosed. A lot of times, if some of these issues were dealt with early on, if the resources were there, then we wouldn't have issues where a 15-year-old would pick up a machine gun and shoot down people and have no remorse for it. So I think that as a community, we're obligated. I think that we're all obligated, and I think that we need to work harder at resources for people that fall in that low income bracket. I think even like the young man said, what resources, I don't know of any, correct me if I'm wrong, but what resources do we have for young men and women that have did bids in prison, that get out, that help them get their GED? Where's the safe haven for them to go, for them to talk to somebody, to deal with whatever emotional issues they're having? It's hard out here. There are no resources. That is why Black crime, to me, continues to be such an issue. The education is not there, the support is not there, and there aren't any resources. That's just my take on it.
I love your take because the resources are there. You know, sometimes we change rules and we, you know, especially working on our GED and trying to fight and trying to get on our feet, and it's taken away. Or that as soon as we have some hope, here we go, we want to change the policy up or change something to make it harder. And we got to be aware of that and vote people out, or those who are policy shifters. We got to address that because that's a problem. But you said something about accountability, and I want that to go into my next question. We know the kids have to be responsible, but should parents be held accountable as well if their children commit a crime, or you have repeat offender status to the point where it's over, and the crime is just it's just bad? Should parents be held accountable? And Ms. Holmes and Brother Corey, I want y'all to jump on that for me. I know we are enjoying this, but if we can limit our comments to about 3 minutes so we can get through the questions and have next steps with our solution. So let's just be mindful, panelists, of our time. Ms. Holmes, accountability.
Well, I think that parents should have some shared responsibility or accountability when it comes to their children committing crimes, because if they're under 18, if they're under 13, or, you know, however they want to set that up, parents have to be held accountable for what their underage children do. And then also the children have to be held accountable as well. And when I mean accountable, it's not like, oh, okay, the kid has assaulted somebody, and now we just want to put the mama, the daddy, and the baby in jail. No, they need to be rehabbed. They need to figure out the very foundation of what their problem is, because we were just talking about black on black crime, and I wish I could have jumped in on that question. But when it comes to black on black crime, a lot of that comes from a hatred of self. Whether that self is somebody like you looking in the mirror and you're looking across the hall at somebody who looks like you, or whether that's like you're looking inward at yourself, and it comes from that, and it comes from our community not doing what we're supposed to do and building those children. That's why I went into education, because like I can talk to adults all day about Black history, Black heritage, Black culture, and whatever, but if they don't love Black people and they don't love themselves, and they might say, oh, I love myself, girl, I'm so fine. They can say all of that. However, when it comes down to it, their actions show that they don't love their children, they don't love themselves, they don't love other people that look like them, and they don't even love the people who are them. So when it comes to coming back around to the question that you asked me, should the parents be held responsible if they're underage? I think that accountability should be shared, but then it should be shared. The punishment should be something that's around rehabilitation, therapy, things of that sort, so we can actually start rebuilding that relationship between the parent and the child, so the child will actually listen to the parent, and then also that child can go forward making better decisions with his or her life.
Corey.
How you doing? Yes, I kind of look at it twofold. Far as being responsibility as the parent, negligence. Okay, yes, if parents are negligent in the rearing and upbringing of their kids, they should be held responsible and held accountable. But you also have those parents who have reared their kids good, that they went above and beyond to try to provide a positive life, positive environment for them child. And sometimes them kids just stray away. I mean, peer pressure, what have you, different environment, things like divorce or, having trouble at school, things of that nature that's beyond the parent control, then no, they should be held accountable for that. But as Ms. Holmes stated, it should got to be some type of intervention or rehab or something to help those parents and those kids interact together, which is going to be rely heavily on the community, the schools. It's not a one size fit all, and that's what we have problems with every time in the community now. We think every situation is a direct relation to something else. It's it's more than one way to get there. You may take 85 or you may take 82 to get the Tuscaloosa from here, but at the end, you're going to get there. So some people have to go the slower route. Some people don't want to be on the freeway. So that's my whole take on that, on the whole situation.
Okay. So what are the thoughts? And this question is for Brother Cassius Lanier and Miss Cooper. We looking at our young people when juveniles go to show signs they're heading down the wrong path. What should we do? And then I want you to keep that in the backdrop of your mind. And also in light of the recent shootings and police brutality, what are your thoughts on it? Brother Lanier and Miss Cooper, talk to me on that in terms of our juvenile justice system and when they're showing those signs, and then we got to shift. What's your take on it?
Who's first?
Ladies first, bro.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, definitely.
Like Brother Cassius. Okay, Miss Cooper.
All right. Well, I think that, when you see them headed in the wrong direction, there definitely has to be some kind of intervention that can take place before they get, locked up in juvie. Unless you find out they're headed in the wrong direction as a result of them committing some kind of crime or putting somebody in danger. You know what I'm saying? Then of course that needs to be handled the way it needs to be handled. But there has to be some kind of step before that. There has to be some kind of education before that. And it has to include something that would deter them from ending up, on the wrong side of the tracks, as they say. It can't just be don't do that because I said so. There has to be an understanding of the consequence. there has to be some kind of something you can show them, some kind of hard evidence that if you continue on this path, this is how you're going to end up. And, they have to weigh this consequence. They have to weigh the pros and cons of their actions. They have to start thinking about the consequences of what they're doing, because 9 times out of 10, I can guarantee you a kid that's headed down the wrong road is either unaware of the consequences or unafraid of the consequences. Okay, so you have to first make sure they're aware of the consequences. And if they're not afraid of the consequences, then it needs to be made clear to them somehow why they should be. So, and it all depends on, it's a case by case thing, but the lack of concern for consequences, the lack of concern for the safety and life of others, that is definitely a problem that needs to be nipped in the bud as soon as it begins to rear its head. But there has to be some understanding of the consequences that needs to, that we have to reach them with. And this was a 2-part question. Yes, what was the other part?
The other part just dealt with your thoughts on the recent shootings in our community.
Okay, my thoughts on the recent shootings are, I think that it is good that there is still a reaction. There needs to be stress put on the fact that there always needs to be a reaction. I'll give you an example of like when, a little kid falls down and hurt themselves, and the parents will be like, okay, well, let me see first. If they don't freak out, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to do nothing about it. They'll be fine to get up and keep it moving. But if that child, punch a hole in their knee and they're bleeding and they start crying out, they got a problem that needs to be fixed, somebody's going to come to their aid, right? But when there's no reaction, there's no response, so to speak. So I think it's good that when we have shootings and things like that take place, like what happened at the mall and things like that, that there was an immediate action that persisted until somebody was apprehended. If we had just kind of blown it off like, Negroes will be Negroes, nobody would have done anything. There always has to be a reaction. Once we get desensitized to the point where we don't react, then we won't, we won't be effective in deterring that at any level, because there always has to be a reaction when something like that happens. We can't just brush it off like, oh, that's just how it is in the hood, or that's just how, our people are. We can't ever get to the point where it's like that. So it is terrible that it happened, that it's continuing to happen. But I think that so long as we're still in a state where we can react, we're not, all is not lost.
Cassius. Excellent, Ms. Cooper. Cassius.
Thank you, Dr. Lowell. When you try to deal with that, when you see the youth going in a certain direction, like to just target them alone is an unhealthy battle, right? Because what you're gonna do is you're gonna, the teacher or the instructor or the mentor, what they're gonna do, they're gonna work themselves to death on one end, getting the child prepared, prepped, or turned around, right? And then we never had an option to explore the condition, the circumstances, and the cognition. You know what I'm saying? All these things play a part. Something happened, which was the circumstance, to put there. You got to think about the conditions on the children or the youth have come from, right? The projects, a poverty mentality, or poverty stricken. Let me not the mentality. Let me say this: a poverty stricken area that you may see a child that has gotten in trouble at school all the time, and so all we do is throw him in the office and suspend him, and he in there bucking and acting a fool because he hungry, or his shoes too tight, or he, something that happened at home makes him react or act out. You see what I'm saying? So what we do, we probably get ourselves attached to them, and we make 8 hours of their life. Salute to teachers and educators and leaders in the community, because 8 hours of their lives, or they're able to be normal, regular. They can eat a couple times a day. They can learn. They can be in a clean, nonviolent environment for that period of time until the bell rings, right? And so when the bell rings, you go back to the condition from which you came. That listen, all this plays a part. So when we say, hey, we need to get these young men, and I hate to see people say, y'all men need to get these young men and do something with them. Listen, most of the time when people say that, they have no clue what's going on behind closed doors, because everybody don't go live to mentor a child or to buy them some shoes or take them to the mall or make them sure they got clean. Listen, so what happens is we mentor them, but we have no relationship or can't even reach the parents or wherever they live or where they coming from. So when they leave us and go back to a bad situation, everything we've done has been erased. It's like the TV show 50 First Dates. You know what I mean? The lady she had a ball of a time every day, but every time she go to sleep, she forgot what happened the day before. So this dude had to work harder over and over again to win her heart again every night. You see what I'm saying? And that's what educators and city leaders and mentors and pastors and preachers do. And so, of course, that's a problem. You understand? And not to dog the home life, but there is a disconnect. There is a disconnect. And so when I see shootings, and when I see young men killing themselves like dogs in the streets, right? That hurt my heart. Listen, and guess what? I'm not just hurting for the person who died. I'm hurting for the shooter. You see, as well. And I don't want to stay safe long, but I'm telling you, all these things play a part in this. And it's hurtful. It makes me angry because of our plight. Because we want people to understand what Black Lives Matter means. Black Lives Matter doesn't mean white lives don't matter. Doesn't mean Hispanic life. It only means that our lives matter as well. You understand? And so don't think that we want to raise hell about a police killing a Black and we don't feel the same energy when one of our children or kill our own. See, we don't celebrate that. It's a terrible feeling. I can't hear you, Brother Lowe.
Excellent point, Brother Cass. Thank you.
Yes,
Brother Perry, you have your hand up. And Brother Cass, I want you to, we got another question for you with the Black Lives Matter, and so you can really get into that.
Okay.
Brother Perry, you want to respond? Comments, sir.
Yes, sir. I wanted to just say everything that Mr. Lanier said is exactly true. That kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's like people always say education starts at home, but like he just said, you're at school most of the time. So that's one of the things that automatically knocks that out the way. And then when you go to the fact that what if you have parents that's working overnight? The students may never see their parents. So then in another case, that's why I feel like the responsibility is partially on the teachers. I was talking to a teacher. A teacher has to be so much. They have to be a parent. They have to be a mentor. They have to be a mental health specialist. They have to be a nurse. They have to teach. They have to do so much. And everything that Mr. Lanier said is exactly right. You can't always just say, well, that's another Black person or another Black child killing him. What is the problem? That's the only way you're going to figure out. And that's the only way you're going to help, if you figure out what the problem is. You can't always put it off. Like he said, their home life is so important. What if they don't have nowhere to sleep at home? Where's the resources for that? What if they don't have a positive father at home? What are the resources for that? What if they're getting abused at home? What are resources for that? Like they may not feel comfortable to talk about it, but if you have that mentor there that they can call on at any time, stuff like mine, places like that gave students at Central High School a chance to go where maybe their teacher didn't quite understand them, or maybe they didn't know exactly how to relate to what was going on, or the teachers just didn't know. Mind Changers was a place in that school where students can go, where they can go and just let go of everything. If they needed a break, they can go there. If they needed to do that work, they can go there. And I just wanted to stress everything that Mr. Lanier said, because it is absolutely right.
Excellent point. Young people, any thoughts and comments? The pair, you answer the next question about sports and mentoring, the importance of it. You nailed it. If anybody want to have a comment, we can. You may, but it just, that's what we need. We need, those powerful programs in our schools so they can have that outlet, so they can build their trust. But our young people, any comments?
Hey, brother moderator, I can see it a little different than you see it. Let the two young people go. Then it's, the other panelists seem like they want to chime in as well. I know I saw Miss Holmes' hand. I saw Miss Cooper hand as well.
Thank you, in that order. Thank you, Champion Principal. Let's go in that order. Young people in Holmes and Cooper, Doc. All right. All right. Please continue.
I was gonna say one thing to add to what I was saying as well. One thing that kind of helped me out was that when I was in high school, and even now to my level in college, but mainly in high school, I was involved in so much. So I was mostly at the school. So I was involved in the band, FBLA, ambassadors, everything like that. So that kept me out of trouble. So you just always have to relate and find a way for every student to be involved. Because most of the kids that you think are troublemakers, they're really some of the smartest kids in the school, but you would never know because nobody make that extension to them. You just really have to find out what students are interested in, because everybody may not be the same. And what I'm interested in and what Sean is interested in and Steven is in is different.
Excellent point. Steve, Sean, any comments?
I just want to touch on, I think it's important that everyone knows, especially when trying to help those younger kids, is that everybody's circumstances are different. You may have a lot of kids who live in Hayes Court, and I may be, doing well for myself, joining a lot of organizations, that keep me busy and keep me out of trouble. But what's happening in my household can be different from what's happening in the household down the street from me. Like Laboris was pointing out, somebody in that household may be getting abused. Somebody in that household might have a parent who's never at home because they're working all day long, to try to provide from them and their couple of brothers and sisters. And so it's a lot to take into account where you want to be able to aid and teach and help, mold the minds of, the future, and then all those different kids that we have out here.
Very good. Awesome.
To piggyback off of what they were saying, Mr. Smith and Mr. Perry, basically what based off my experience and what I've been through, I in my junior year in high school at Hillcrest, I was and in my senior year, I was president of a club. That was junior year, most important year in high school. I'm sorry. Dealing with junior was also my important year in high school, dealing with the ACT. ACT decides what school you go to, college, and things of the sorts. And I had a lot of things going. I played basketball. I played travel basketball, and I found a mentor through travel basketball. And what this organization, they're called the Tuscaloosa Bucks. What this organization has done has been absolutely amazing, and they deserve a lot of credit on the things that they have done for kids on the West Side, and it's been predominantly the West Side, because a lot of those kids over there, they go to sports in order to get out of trouble and things of the sort. And it's up to those who head those organizations to bring those kids in and teach them right from wrong. So again, a lot of things dealing with teaching kids and teaching them right from wrong is up to, you know, whether you can build an organization ground up and whether you know yourself right from wrong as an adult and how to teach it to a child.
I want to say one last thing. I just want to say, one community that I feel is a great, safe haven for young Black men or just young Black people in general is Central High School. Central High School has produced so many amazing people and youth leaders at this time. When I came to Central, Laboris was one of the first people I met. Laboris is one of my best friends right now, my mentor, my brother, in Cap League, in band, and FBLA, and everything that I joined that he was in as well. And he is one of the people who has helped shape me to who I am today. And there are so many people in Tuscaloosa who have never set foot inside the walls of Central High School, but have so much to say. But they have never met people like Dr. Clarence Sutton, like Miss Madison Marche Pill, like Dr. Teresa Jones Hamilton, who are working so hard to help all those kids who come from the West Side or who come from all over the town, who need help, who want different opportunities, whether that's dual enrollment work or joining another organization to take their mind off of what's going on at home and, just basically helping them in whatever way is possible.
Awesome. Thank you, young people.
Oh yes, and I wanted to kind of chime in a little bit. We were talking about like Black Lives Matter, and it's really good that we are finally getting to a point that we are saying that Black Lives Matter. So it seems like more people are actually believing that Black Lives Matter. We still have a long way to go. We are nowhere near 100%, but we have to start believing in that first. And I did want to kind of give a tad bit of an update because I didn't say it in my introduction. I am from Birmingham, Alabama. I taught in Perry County. I taught at RC Hatch. I think the pastor said he was in Marion because I lived in Marion and worked in Birmingham City. And now I'm in Houston, Texas. So even when we talked about George Floyd, I know he was not killed in Texas, but he was actually from the neighborhood where I live. And so a lot of the, I would, be sitting in my living room planning different things, and we'll hear a whole lot of protesting, and then we'll run right to the window, and right on my street, we would hear and see all of the protesters going in. I remember there were days where police just had our whole neighborhood just blocked off, and we could barely get to where we were going to. And I'm like, hey, I live here. But then it's like the young man said, I think it was Sean, who said like he was even in a situation where you weren't even doing anything, just being that close in that close vicinity to the police, you don't know what's going to pop off. And if you think about it, and if you think about some of the things that that we found out about George Floyd and the guy who killed him, they used to work together. They actually knew each other, and they knew each other very well. But still, the police officer used his place of power over him to do what he did. And now this is propelling us to a national movement of Black Lives Matter. And like I said, when I first started, Black lives should matter to us first. It should matter to us first. And also being a teacher, I teach out here. I'll be teaching 10th grade this year. So I'm moving out of middle school. Yes, moving out of middle school, going back to high school. But one of the things that I learned when I was learning how to be a teacher was like teaching is more of a cycle. A lot of people like to point the finger and say, oh, well, if the church people, if the pastor was doing what they were supposed to do, if the church was doing what they're supposed to do, now I hear all the time, well, teachers need to teach this. If teachers need to do that, I'm like, these are not our kids. They're our babies. We love them, and I want to say that. But the problem is that people are always pointing outward, but they're never pointing inward at what can I do to help our children. There is a cycle. Parents are a part of that cycle because they're the one who give birth to those kids. You got people who are in the community, could be a pastor, could be a person who's over an art gallery. I had an art gallery owner to come into my classroom, and my kids still, when they see me on Facebook, they still come and tell me about how they enjoyed that day when that art teacher came. I have a friend who's a nationally awarded poet who came into one of my classes a few years ago. They still tell me about that one day when I brought somebody in the community in to talk to them about different things. It's a big cycle. It's not just pointing the finger out at one person. And then if we're talking about what needs to be done, don't just say, oh, they need to do it. Think about how you can actually do it. How can you join the action group of people who are doing it? Come up with your own idea. You know what your thoughts and your ideas are. You know what your talents are. You know what your talents are. Like if you come into my classroom, I'm a really lively person. I love laughing. I love joking. I love acting and drama and stuff. So you really don't know what the heck you're going to get in my classroom, but it should be something that's lively and engaging. So, hey, maybe that will build one of my students' confidence. Now they have to speak. Now they have to do. Now they are liking school. They might not like me. Hey, I'm an adult. I'm not supposed to like kids, you know, you know. But but they're gonna like something. They're gonna learn something. They're gonna get engaged, and they're gonna move from one level to another level when they're in my classroom. And if they can't, they for some reason they feel barred and they can't establish some type of relationship with me, I can say, hey, okay, this kid right here, they love to dance. Back in my smaller days, I could dance. Now I can't dance no more. So I'm gonna send them down the hall to the English teacher who helps out with the dance team. You know, so that's a community working together, all for the development of that one child. And we have to start pointing inward and coming up with these solutions for our children, not solutions for other people, solutions that we can actually do. And then once we start planning it, hey, they will come.
Cooper, follow up. Ms. Green.
Yeah, I wanted to touch back on what Brother Lanier was speaking about, mentors, because we remember when we had Rodney Pelt on, and he was talking about how difficult it is for him sometimes, or discouraging it can get. And I just wanted to reiterate that, yeah, mentoring is an uphill battle by no means, especially when you have kids that come from difficult home settings. It's not going to be easy. It's going to feel like you're repeating yourself and screaming into the wind sometimes. But I wanted to just say to anybody who is considering being a mentor to not let that discourage you, because as the young people are even saying, they're telling you straight out of their mouth, we need more mentors. We need more people to volunteer their time and just a listening ear sometimes. More people willing to, even if they don't know the answers, to help them find the answers. And it's not going to be easy. But there definitely needs to be more of us on this battlefield, because if not for us, sometimes these kids have no one. So I just wanted to encourage anybody watching who isn't already a mentor to a child in their vicinity, just, consider that, because you are needed.
It's Green. Ms. Green. Brother Corey.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Green. Talk to me.
Piggybacking off of like what she just said about the mentoring, I think that is extremely vital with kids. I would personally, as a parent, again, speaking as a parent, I think the world, I always say the world is evolving by the second. And I think when it comes to our children and our youth, it is up to us to be a couple steps ahead of the game. I think that, for instance, like school counselors, I know to a certain extent they are there to assist and to help with the children, but I just don't know, and I don't want to disregard what they do, but I'm not just quite sure if they're equipped to, like I was talking about earlier, helping with the mental space with kids. But to me, it would be refreshing to see some sort of, maybe like, for example, support groups that the school system could maybe incorporate at some point in time. I know that sounds like a lot because our kids only have 7+ hours in school, but with social media, cell phones, there are different outlets that in ways that could be possible, because I just feel like kids deal with so much. I majored in human development and family studies, and I have a great interest in just youth and adolescents and what makes them tick. And times are different. Like I said, it's hard being a kid now. Things are not like, I'm 39, but things are nowhere near what they were when I was a kid. You have kids trying to fit in. You have kids that have issues with their sexual orientation. You have kids that even the racism. So to me, I just feel like there needs to be other resources to make them feel comfortable. Because if this isn't good, then everything else that follows is a miss. And so I feel like if we had, kids don't tell their parents everything, but I feel like sometimes kids are more comfortable with talking to an unbiased entity that's not going to be judgmental, that's not going to rip them to shreds right quick. And so if they had that option, then I think that could help a lot. That type of mentoring would really help. And I know it's probably far-fetched to think about, but like I said, with the tools that we have now, anything is possible.
The social emotional learning piece is key.
Mm-hmm.
You hit the nail on the head. We gotta build strong individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next person.
Brother Corey.
Yes, just go back onto the mentorship. I think that's very, very important. Even any professional career you're in, you must have a mentor in order to be successful to move on. It is no different from, I mean, the younger kids right now, and just hearing the other kids talk, man, it's just a real big disconnect. While I was listening to things, I was like, hey, maybe I need to think about that for my 13-year-old, because he just hit,
That's good.
like, it's a big culture shock, TikTok, all this stuff. So I get in his business, and that's one thing, sometimes he goes away, shies away from it. But I get in his business, and just try to be there to understand and go through. And a lot of times, I'm learning a lot from him of things that I learned back in the day that wasn't right, that I assume was right. But being a mentor, you also get a chance to learn some things for yourself. You got to go back to the old days, man. Community involvement. We got to forecorner these kids, man. Wherever they go, somebody there to give them a high five, give them a pat on the back, as well as chastise them, let them know, hey, that's not right. And in the Black community, we got to do that more for one another. We don't really need the police to police our community. We need to start policing our own community.
That's right.
That way, we don't have to worry about police brutality. It's going to be there, but a majority of police brutality, I feel, don't come from racism. They scared. They working in a community that they really can't relate to. You can't relate to me. You from the suburbs and I'm from the hood. Of course you're going to fear me. Big black guy, that's the first thing they're going to say. They're going to be feared. You have those incidents where you do have racist problems, but majority of the time, those people are scared. And they need to start spending more money on intervention versus spending a lot of money on putting people in jail. If they spend money on teaching, getting before deterring and detecting what's going on, then you might have to spend so much money on mass incarceration, things of that nature. That's just my 2 cents.
Good point. It's Hooks.
I really like what Corey just said regarding the piece about fear. And that says a lot about how you think about things, Corey, because even in the midst of this, you're looking at it through the eyes of an empath. You can understand and put yourself in the other person's shoes. I think that's key. I do think mentorship is important. Also, there are a lot of resources available that I don't think we fully take advantage of. There is a disconnect. There's a disconnect with resources that are available, because I don't know how many times I have been saying there should be an A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then someone who's fully aware, they're like, oh, we have that. It's right here. And so we think these things don't exist sometimes, and they really do. And I'm hearing more and more about resources that are underutilized. And so the part about helping people who really need it get to it, that's a body of work to be done right there. The other thing is conversations like these that we're having, to continue to keep it at the forefront and keep it a priority, because I think COVID-19 set us down long enough and caused us to think about our mortality. And then to have George Floyd be killed on live TV right in front of our faces like that, and to watch this man, breathe his last breath in real life, it was too much. It was too many eyeballs, too much accountability. And it was like, okay. And so I say, may we never go back to thinking that that's acceptable. And may we never get comfortable with our young people killing each other. May we never get comfortable. And this conversation has caused me to think about who else I can touch and get involved with and build trust and a relationship with, to be able to help make a difference, because you got to see it to be it. If you don't ever see it, the chances of you being it, they are marginalized. And so I think everybody on this call, I just want to say we're the good guys. We are the good guys. And we have solutions inside of ourselves, you know, and the answer is inside of the question. And sometimes that puzzles my mind when I hear it, but I always find out it's true. So there's an answer inside of the question. And if we can strategically align and pull on resources that already exist, and if those resources are not being used properly or people aren't doing proper outreach, then pull those resources and give them to somebody who can really make a difference. But wherever there's a lack of power, accountability is always the answer, I believe.
Like the lack of accountability. For the Cassis.
Yes, sir. So I know you said you wanted to double back to the Black Lives Matter deal.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What's
so,
your thoughts about it?
Of course, and let me say the panelists, Mildred, Andrea, man, everybody rocking. They get down. Miss Cooper, Miss Green, everybody, Corey. I want to say this though, and I like to express this because I don't want them to think that we are copping out on crime in our own community. You see what I'm saying? You see the difference in how I stated that? Crime in our own community opposed to black on black crime. Because when addressed, when there's crime in north of the river or down 43 or in down in Hollywood or wherever area the Wellingtons, guess what? That's not, we don't say white, that's white on white crime. There was a crime committed north of the river in 35406. You see what I'm saying? And it holds the same weight as the crime committed in 35401. You see what I'm saying? And so we didn't put a tag on their crime. We didn't magnify the crime that happened over there. And guess what? We are equally pissed off that it happened to them. People we don't know. We don't glorify or we don't get excited when somebody white kill another white person. That's not exciting. We don't get excited when somebody black kills a white person. We don't get excited when somebody white kills a black. See, that's what I'm saying. We view it one way. And we can't allow the media or the government or the powers that be to put a tag on what happens in our community that's led to crime, right? We can't let y'all put a tag on that, because when you do, then you counter the protest for equality. You see what I'm saying? That's what you're doing. You're countering our protest. When we say Black Lives Matter, then you'll say, hey, but it didn't matter last night over in West End, but we didn't talk about the murder on the boat dock in 43. That got very little news play, you understand me? Because nobody had anything to say about white on white crime there. Because and the other part is white people don't have to fight for equality.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? The way is laid out for them. You understand? The way is made for them. We are still in 2020 when we thought that cars would be flying in the air, like the Jetsons said, like Brother Jetson prophesied it, that we'll have cars flying. No, we're still fighting for equality as black people. Yeah, you have a small percent of business owners, entrepreneurs, but look on this line, you have educated people. Andre, I know for a fact, graduated from the University of Alabama. Roll Tide all day long. You understand me? But see, these are the things that you miss. Don't let what you view you would miss that because what she's speaking about, and that's so important. When she said we needed groups, we needed like self-help groups, in other words, or like we have Alcohol Anonymous, right? That was for we had Alcohol Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous. See, all those things were founded for white people to miss incarceration. So that's where your punishment was Alcohol Anonymous or Cocaine Anonymous. We ain't had Crack Anonymous. Ain't nobody had that. We had crime related or black on black crime. You see, we were super predators. See, it's a line that separates us. So we no longer will allow y'all to tag that because we want our rights. We want equality. And guess what? Don't say we're racist because we're telling you that Black Lives Matter. The only thing we're leaving out when we say Black Lives Matters is Black Lives Matters too, or Black Lives Matter as well. That's all we're saying. And we're not going to explain that anymore. We're not going to let y'all boo us down with every time we say a cop killed a black person, y'all say, how many people died in Chicago last weekend? Now, I want you to do is pull the record on how many and what color people died in. Let's talk about who died in Idaho or Iowa. You understand me? That's not magnified in the media. So that's my problem with black on black. I don't want to hear that. Here's the other problem. We don't care for our community killing each other. We hate crime just as much as they do. You understand me? But these are programs like what we need suicide prevention in high school. That should be a credit hour. When Andrew was saying we need to focus on mental illness, no, if it's 7 hours in the day of school, give 1 credit hour to 2 credit hours to mental health. Let it be crime prevention. Let that be an hour, credit hour. Let it be suicide prevention or depression, how to deal with depression in certain areas, or how to overcome your condition, or even if you need a credit hour to go take a shower because your water off at school. Let's call this home economics, and then get you to the side and say, hey,
you preaching now.
We got a shower in there for you. This
exactly.
Private. This ain't nobody business. We got a pantry with nice
soap.
shoes, with some soap, and we got some little nice jeans that'll fit you for all sizes. Skinny jeans to big and tall. This ain't nobody business. If you don't tell it, nobody know it. But guess what? We call it home economics because home economics gonna build up your self-esteem. And then when your self-esteem built up, and then we're gonna put you a little plate in your stomach mid-meal between breakfast and lunch because you ain't ate all night. Then guess what? You have enough energy to learn and focus at least for those hours. It's some things that we can put in place that's available to us, but we have to change the curriculum all the way down from the ACT and the SATs that were not made for our kids. We need some urban curriculum. Because ask me that same question in the term that I know how to talk, and our kids to have a 30 on the ACT too. But I ain't gonna get into all that.
You did. Green, I know you're ready to take it.
I'm ready, and I'm fired up, and I feel good because my people on fire. That's what shout out to the young people and the youth and the panel like this, because we on fire, and the young people really stirred it up. We were done when it came with George Floyd, but I'm telling you right now, it's more to that. And I'm gonna say this, and I ain't gonna lay on it. But I have met with the mayor since, and I ain't going live and talking about that, about initiatives that we're planning. We're doing some groundwork on it, because I don't want to get up here and act like I didn't talk to he ain't about what I spoke with him, and I also spoke with Chief Brent on a couple of meetings about police reform and bringing back the police athletic leagues in every neighborhood and projects. The one I grew up when we had Jerome Western and Officer Coleslaw. You know, you have people like that in the neighborhood, Mason, and you know, you get Nice Sebo and all them ready to get back. They're doing this right now. We brought people to speak. So I speak, and also police interaction and community policing. You can no longer ride through our neighborhoods and mean mug us. You got to get out the car with a donut, a hot dog, or just talk. Tell me your name. Your name. Hey man, I'm Steve. You know what I mean? I ain't here to make you feel like I'm patrolling you or patrolling the cell block. I just want to let you know, if you need me, I'm here. We're speaking of that initiative, a community and police event that's gonna have a police and community basketball game mixing it up. You know what I'm saying? Listen, these things are on the table because we can no longer go on like that. We're fortunate that we hadn't had a cop kill a civilian in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And for that, I give him praise because we don't want to have that, right?
You don't.
On the other side, we did have a cop killed by a civilian. You see what I'm saying? And we still have to recognize that too. So there's a responsibility and accountability on both sides. But we understand that we've been playing behind the 8 ball for a long time. So give us room to breathe because we're ready to work hand in hand if y'all are. But what we're not going to do any longer is just sit there. My partner wrote a poem one time, and it's called "Who Are You That Sits There?" We can no longer sit there.
Miss Green and Miss Hooks.
Okay, I'm gonna be really quick. Again, Cassius, what you said really hit home. We are, like I said earlier, we are living in different times. These children are a different breed. The curriculum needs to be redid, revamped, reevaluated. Like what you said about even home ec, personal hygiene, just those are the things that you pretty much you cleaned it up and shined it over. But that's what I was getting at. Like the curriculum, academia is truly the headliner. Get good grades, go to college. But again, these kids need to be equipped with certain things that the schools are just failing to educate them with. And then that goes back to who we're voting for. We vote for these people to sit on the Board of Education, and they're literally doing just that, sitting there,
Exactly.
not doing anything, not incorporating anything new. You're 147 years old on the board. You are outdated, and we need change. That goes back to that. And to go back to the Black Lives Matter thing, I've been so torn about that. You cannot disregard one without having the other. Black Lives Matter started in 2013 as a result of Zimmerman being acquitted of killing Trayvon Martin. That's when Black Lives Matter. And it's solely, the basis of that was built off of us directing our energy towards police brutality, racism, and all that. And then you have the black on black crime. You can't disregard either one of them, but they're different. And I just feel like a lot like what Cassius said, white people kill white people every day. Mexicans kill. You get on social media and you see it.
Right,
and
proximity.
I feel like social media is so misleading and so biased, and that they just pump that black people kill black people, and it's more important, it's more severe than a white person killing a white person. But in my opinion, that takes the focus off of law enforcement being able to legally kill black people. We don't need to lose focus. Yes, black on black crime is important, but a white police officer should not be able to crush a man's pharynx
Exactly.
and he gets away with it. That's how I feel about it. Black people do not lose focus. Yes, we need to get in the streets. We need to march about these kids killing each other. It's important. It's severe. It's a big deal, but it is also a even bigger deal, again, that a white man can put his knee on a black man's throat and crush his pharynx and bond out of jail. That's a big problem. Apples and oranges, but you can't disregard the other.
I want the world to know that's first-degree murder. That's a violation of your oath.
You can't disregard that. That's a problem, and I'm sick of seeing it. I'm tired of seeing it.
Absolutely.
I don't know who hand is up, and I don't know who turn it is, but I see
Miss Hooks.
I see Miss Holmes' hand is up also, but make sure we go to Hooks too.
Miss Hooks, let's go, and Miss Holmes.
So I think we need to have a submarine effect within our community, meaning that the pressure on the inside is greater than the pressure on the outside. So that when we are not living up to who we really, really are, we need to look at it and go after it like gangbusters. When I was growing up, if I tried to skip school, which I did, before I got home, I had already been chastised 3 times, no lie. And then when I got home, the party line had already made its way to grandmama's house. And she said that Miss Florida said you were downtown at 11 o'clock. So what I'm trying to say is we have got to develop a social contract within our community that it is okay. And teachers are amazing in Tuscaloosa City Schools. I'll tell anybody. I've put them up against anybody, anywhere. And I mean that. But outside of the school, if I hear a group of teenagers using profanity walking down the street, I need to, and my kids like, Mom, you think you everybody's mama. I am everybody's mama.
That's right.
But some of them will cuss you back out now. They'll cuss you out. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we have got to give one another permission to care for one another. That's what I'm trying to say. And the second thing, I'm gonna make it quick, is that the one thing I loved about the civil rights movement is what we came to discover about ourselves, that we could do more together. But one thing about the civil rights movement that I had a problem with is that we stopped. We stopped because we memorialized the image of what we believe was the civil rights movement, which was Martin Luther King Jr. And so we looked at him as the image of a thing that had been accomplished, and it has not been accomplished. It's still going. The civil rights movement is still happening right now. And I'm so glad to be alive at this time, because I believe we're gonna be the ones that will bring it to pass. I really believe we the ones.
You ain't gonna be here that time, right?
And you know what, man, I don't want to jump in your thing, but guess what, Mildred? You know why? Because you're right. We did memorialize that movement when really we didn't even hear the prophecy from the great Dr. Martin Luther King. He said one day, he said, I had a dream. You know what I mean? Old men dream, young men, what? Have visions. So if that's the case, then the dream Brother King had was supposed to be carried out like brothers like me and my sons and your sons and daughters. But the thing is, we can't lay down and say, okay, it's done. The work is not done. He was rewarded because it memorialized, because he had the guts enough to start the work. We have to finish it or take it to another level. He didn't actually start. It was started before him, but take it to another level. We pick up the torch and run with that. That's why he said one day. So that means on and on, progressive. You know what I mean? But we have to make them look and listen. Yeah, exactly.
And I want to say this too. The one thing we really need to focus on is helping our young people. And I was having this conversation with Noah last night. We have got to equip the young people to carry it forward strategically, and don't drop it like it got dropped after MLK died, because the 80s was an atrocity in our community. We went from Black pride, Black love, everything we had going on for us, I loved it, till we started to slip over into something that was not truly our value.
The crack epidemic. You know what I'm saying? Yes. We went from Black pride to drug addicts.
Correct.
You see what I'm saying?
Correct. And so we got to
guess what? And we didn't go get it, even though that's not an excuse. We didn't go get it and drop it off in the neighborhood.
We ain't got no dogs.
Just like the opioid crisis right now, it's such a big deal because you're having white kids. You know, it wasn't that much attention brought to it until you had a couple white people to die from it.
Well, I want to see I'm gonna be a little controversial, and then I'm gonna be quiet. All right, champion principle. But in the same way, they locked up my brothers and my sisters for selling synthetic cocaine. I want them to lock up these doctors that's writing these open-ended scripts. I want them to go. I want to see the opioid crisis. I want to see the accountability for the opioid crisis. Because when I went to Alabama, I tell you, I've never seen so many prescriptions be written. I was like, what kind of drug dealership?
You want the opioid consequence to be equivalent to the crack law.
And
which made us do 85% of your time if you had this much of crack. So we like,
And at this point in time, since weed is a stock on the stock market, WEED, I'm gonna need them to let all my brothers and sisters out of jail right now. I don't care what state you in.
I agree.
We're hot tonight.
Yes, sir. We smoking tonight.
I
Dr. Flo,
love
let's
it.
go, Dr. Flo.
Yeah.
Anybody that's
I
still in
love it,
I'm
friendship,
Champion
sorry, I'm
Principal.
just
We
fussing.
got
I
to
know
keep
this ain't
going.
what we don't fuss
Dr.
about.
Flo, let's go.
I know we gotta go. We
But
gotta
that's the
go.
stuff
It's
we
so
need to go.
good.
We
We
need
do.
to go
I let
after
it
that
go.
though.
I sent you the
We
plan,
can
Dr. Lowe. Follow it.
we can go after that though. We really can. I think we need to go. Those are the kinds of equality issues that we're going to start to target, and we're going to use our young people to be a part of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Hey,
because
Miss
we can't forget about that.
Miss Holmes, 1 minute, Miss Holmes, and then we're gonna go to our young people with conclusions. Now as the moderator, I gotta say something. I know Zoe said last night about the drugs. You need to be careful because you all hit on a key element. You can use your medical insurance
To buy drugs.
to protect you. So if you got a treatment problem, I can get a treatment problem and use my medical insurance. Look at the game. Watch the game now and watch what people do. We have to vote. Yeah, Ms. Holmes, 1 minute and young people.
hold on, hey, Dr. Lowe. Ms. Holmes, we're going to give you more than 1 minute. Social media just got on my case. They said, do not cut it off too soon. I don't know. You guys are on fire.
I was trying to tell you, Doc. Champ, I was trying to tell you, Champ.
Doc, I got to go to the house. But they want more of you all. So I'm going to listen to.
we might have to do it again tomorrow.
Facebook, I try to let it flow.
Hey, Doc.
Bro, moderator saying turn it loose, man.
Yeah.
I said 30 minutes, turn it loose.
So we're going to let them
have 15
finish.
more minutes.
We're going to let them finish, at least allow everybody to get one last word in the last statement, and we'll end with the young people with the very final last word. We'll let it flow on a little bit more, Brother Moderator. I apologize.
Okay, you good, champion. You good. Okay, Miss Harris. Okay, let's say, okay. The last question, because we have to close. We have to bring it to a close. But no. You're going to say what you're going to say. Go ahead, Miss Harris. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh no, I just had a whole lot that I wanted to kind of respond to. I like that you all brought up Dr. King and a lot of things that he did. And one of the things that I look at when I look at the civil rights movement of the 60s and the 50s is that a lot of times they may have been fearful, but they didn't let that stop their actions.
Wow. Yes.
You know, when like my adopted granddaddy, Reverend Shuttlesworth, like literally, they on Christmas Day, 1956, they literally bombed his house while he, his wife, his 3 of his 4 children, because his oldest daughter was in the hospital, and a few other people that he was meeting with was literally in the house. He was like, you know, thrown from one side of the house to the other side of his house. He walked out without a scratch because they bombed his house on Christmas Day. The very next day, he was on Birmingham City buses, trying to desegregate the buses. So they may have had a little fear in there, but they didn't allow that fear to actually stop what they were trying to do. But what I think Ms. Hooks was actually saying was that in the 80s, like, you know, a couple of decades after all of that, it was like, you know, it was like a steady decline where a lot of people weren't doing a whole lot of things. We got into a level of comfort where, you know, we thought that we had made it. However, we needed to pick that torch up and keep running that race. And now we're in a situation where, like if my adopted granddaddy, Dr. King, and all of the, their friends and stuff from the civil rights movement were still alive, they'll be like, man, what did I sacrifice my life and my livelihood for? What did I really do? We cannot operate in fear. And I quickly, just a few points, somebody was talking about focusing on the term of Black on Black crime. That is a distraction. Don't worry about the term. The issue still exists. Black lives should matter to Black people, and Black lives should matter to other people, regardless of who's doing the killing, because in the end, our people are dying. Our people are dying. And to bring up just a little bit of history, because I am a history teacher and I love, you know, history is just the best subject ever. When we're talking about the police, and I think it was Corey who said that, oh, well, you know, they could just be scared. This is not their community. If you go back into history and think about what the police were actually created to do, the police were the bounty hunters. So it wasn't us, it wasn't them, but it was their ancestors against our ancestors. So when we said we can't take this fill in the blank anymore, and we decided to run, these bounty hunters running all across the lands trying to find this runaway slave to bring us back to the slave master so we can have our beating. Their property would be returned, their property meaning people who look like us with our same DNA who lived centuries before we did, they were returned back to their own, to the slave master. So I like just thinking about that whole context that has been passed down, that whole ideology has been passed down. So to say that these people are fearful, I see it as a cop-out, because it does not make any sense for you to be in a position of power where you have a gun, where you are going into the communities to do, supposed to serve and protect the people, and you're talking about you are afraid. You are in the wrong profession. If I don't know how to teach, if I don't know social studies, if I don't know how to talk, I'm scared of talking in public, I should not be a doggone teacher. I need to be some little mousy person doing some research behind the computer. Like, I'm not gonna make excuses for somebody who think it's okay to kill people who look like me. And I don't care if it's a white police officer or a black police officer, because at the end of the day, I'm sick and tired of seeing black women crying over the caskets of their kids. I have two cute, my twins are, they'll be 3 in November, and they're little boys, and I've prayed for boys. I always wanted boys, but this world scares me for the world that I'm raising them up in. Mm-hmm. It scares the crap out of me, and I'm not gonna make an excuse for somebody who is bold enough to kill somebody, because if you are truly fearful, walk away, go away. Move back, call your homeboy. And then just think about it. Even when George Floyd was down on the ground, it wasn't just that Chauvin, the police officer who killed him, there were other police officers around. Exactly. So why are you not holding them accountable to the shield? That's what happens a whole lot of times. And even a whole lot has to change, because even in situations where there are police officers who try to stand up and say, you know what, homie, you was doing the wrong thing, man. You don't need to do that. Then we hear a whole lot of backstories about how they basically sabotage these people, and to the point where they're no longer in the, they're no longer a police officer, and they have to go and do other things. So we got to be real about this situation, and we got to stop basically pussyfooting around with this situation. Like, oh, it's going to be okay. Oh, no, and they were just so scared. Oh, they were so scared. No, you're not scared if you sit up here holding a gun. Now, if you gave me a gun, now I'll be up here shaking and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be scared, but I'm not a police officer, so I don't have to hold a gun. Like, we gotta be real about this situation and stop playing around with it, because I'm tired of sitting up here going on live singing all of these sad songs and stuff, and like, man, imagine what he could have been. And I sit up here and I think about George Floyd all the time, and like, of course, I didn't know him, but his cousin, literal cousin, has a business right across the street from me. Like, if I taught in my neighborhood, I told y'all I was teaching 10th grade next year, I literally would be teaching 10th grade at the school where he graduated from. So I didn't know him, and I'm not purporting that I knew him, but it hits me a lot different when I'm sitting up here seeing the same story play out over and over again. When Trayvon Martin's parents came, and I know George Zimmerman was not a police officer, but when I seen his mom and his dad came to Birmingham, back in, I think it was like 2013, he came in Birmingham. I was working with the Metro Birmingham branch NAACP. I had to help plan a rally, and just seeing them coming up there talking about their kid, like talking about him as like a high school student, what he liked to do, all of those types of things. I look in the faces of my little Black and Hispanic and Latino kids, and I'm like, man, do you believe that just because you are this particular color, like you go over colors in preschool and kindergarten, and these grown people are still basing their anger off of a color? And I look in their little faces, and I'm like, man, I just pray over them all the time, like somebody won't take their life just because they don't like their color. So we got to be real with this situation. And and I'm not just, trying to call out one person. It's like, this is just a conversation that I've heard a whole lot about it. And I just had to, speak out about it. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
It's home. Well said. Well put. Thank you for your service. My young people, got closing remarks, excuse me. My two young people,
Hold on, Dr. Lowe, I didn't mean to cut you off. We got to make sure we remember to give the adults a chance. We changed it because social media wanted to hear their last comment. So I know Ms. Holmes just gave her last comment. I can't remember who went before her, but
Okay.
just make sure we give the adults a chance to say their last comments, and we'll end with the younger people.
Okay. All right, Miss Green.
I think we're headed in the right direction, but like what Cassius said, we still have a lot of work to do as a community as a whole. And I think we need to continue to enforce accountability on both sides with the Black on Black crime, and we also need to uphold and try to enforce the fact that accountability needs to be held when it comes to law enforcement. I think it's extremely hard for citizens to follow the rules of the law of the land when our law enforcement, who are sworn in and who get a paycheck to take care of us, are so easily given a pass and slap on the wrist to break the law. And especially when you have proof, it's extremely disappointing. It's embarrassing. The first time I saw the George Floyd snippet, and where he called out for his mama, I cannot tell you how that ripped my heart. I almost want to cry now. It's still that sensitive. Because when we get in trouble, that's usually the first person that we call on is our mama. And so the fact that that was a big man, 6 foot, whatever, the fact that a grown man was the anguish, the pain that man felt, and from my understanding, his mama's deceased. So that just bothered me. And I just feel like, we need to, like I said, not disregard either of them. It's a big problem. And I'm just tired of it. I'm exhausted. I'm emotionally exhausted from it. And I'm just praying that, like Cassius said, while things are still hard, we strike right now. Like in a year's time, I think that we become desensitized. We see it on TV. Like I caught myself a week ago. I was like, I wonder if we're going to have somebody to get shot this weekend. And lo and behold, the shooting at University Mall happened. And that's not normal. That it's become normalcy, but that's not the way life is supposed to be. So I think we got a lot of work to do, but I just wish that, and I'm praying that we can all get on one accord, because another thing is Black people are extremely divided, whether we want to own up to it in a lot of ways right now. Before we can start to see changes in certain areas concerning just our community, we need to get on one accord, because we are extremely divided right now.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Ms. Hooks.
We are a great people, and we can get anything done if we decide and we mobilize and put pressure and create accountability around those things. And at this point, we are in a window of opportunity, and I really pray that we continue to focus and put pressure against any opposition to our well-being, emotionally, physically, mentally, economically, socially, to our well-being and our ability to have a quality of life that's deserving of anybody that calls themselves an American. And there's so many more things I would like to say, but I think it would be irresponsible for me to raise any more issues. So I'm going to just say I'm in it for the long haul. I'm in it for a lifetime. And I'm excited to be shoulder to shoulder with you all as we take this thing from a revelation to a demonstration to a full-blown manifestation.
Wow. Ms. Cooper.
Yes. Okay. So before we conclude today, I wanted, if I could just have a few minutes, because what I do want to do is answer the what about Chicago question, because we do have, it constantly gets brought up, and that happens to be my hometown. And so what I would like to do is walk you all through the pattern of loss that led up to what Chicago currently is. And it often is treated like the mecca of black on black crime in America, because it's kind of notorious for the homicide rates and all of that. But how it got there is what people need to know, so they can keep where they live from becoming that way. So the first thing most people think of when they think about crime in Chicago is gang violence, gangsters. But what they don't know is initially the gang problem in Chicago didn't even involve black people. It was white people, you know, like the mob, the mafia, Capone and all that. So as more and more black people started migrating to Chicago, you know, gang activity was so glorified, they also became involved and started forming gangs. And so then you had the white gangs that saw that as an opportunity. Okay, well, we no longer just have to sell this to our people. We can start moving weight and stuff through the black gangs, and it will be harder for them to tie that back to us. And so they started forming these alliances and all of that. So that's how they got into the drug game and all of that. So, but gangs at that time still had rules. You know, they had hierarchy. We're not gonna sell no hard drugs because we don't want to kill our customers, and we're not gonna let children get involved. So they were, I don't want to say they were community organizations, but they weren't what they are now. So you have these black kids in the ghettos who begin needing more mentors as the drugs and stuff started becoming more and more of a problem for the adults, you know? So they start looking up to the gangsters, and so they having these problems in their home on top of living below the poverty line and stuff like that. So of course they're gonna wanna get in, you know, with what's going on in the street. So the gang start allowing children to join, and then crack showed up. And that was touched on earlier, you know, when the harder drugs and heroin and stuff like that started showing up. And guns started becoming easier and easier to get. Crime, of course, shot up. So now we have kids, a lot of kids in the city who are basically being raised in criminal organizations. Okay, so this is kind of creating a whole new generation of people, right? Who this is what they know. This is how they're surviving. So, but there's still things for the kids to do. So we're entered into the era where we have Harold Washington in Congress, who eventually ended up being the first Black mayor of Chicago, and you know Jesse Jackson is over the SCLC. So we have leaders in high enough places where they're listening and they're making sure you know we have what we need. And there's still things for the kids to do. They're in gangs and stuff, but they're still going to school. You know what I'm saying? There's still a lot of things for them to do inside the school. So, like I said, we have a lot of kids that are growing up in gangs, but they're still not really involved in the gangs. Okay, so, but then after Harold Washington died, and he's no longer the mayor, and Daley takes over, things start getting different. We're still in the middle of the Reagan era. Crack is booming, right? So you got, it was a whole shift because of the change in our Black leadership. We lost that kind of, and so we lost people you know, in the upper levels that were concerned for us. So a lot of the activities and stuff that the kids had started getting defunded, okay? So they were having less and less things to do within their own communities, okay? So then they started getting more involved with the gangs, one, to try and help out at home, to have something to do and someone to idolize, and the older people in the gangs now actually needed the kids to be more involved to keep up with the growing drug trade. So they're now becoming figures within the gangs. So, and they're needed to replace the gang members who are either getting killed in gang wars or locked up in the quote unquote war on drugs. So we having younger and younger people making up these gangs. So the then mayor that was in place thought it was a good idea to try to fix this by getting rid of the projects. So a lot of these kids, they live in the projects. So in the 90s, they started tearing down all the projects in Chicago. So they're taking away public housing. They already took away their community activities. Then they started taking away what they call home. They're losing things and losing things gradually. You see how this is happening. So they took away their activities. They took away their homes. We got families that are displaced, and they just falling back on the streets because that's kind of all they have left. They're leaving them with all they have left is the streets. So these are things they've taken away. And then this was during the time I was in high school. So I kind of saw this decline. When I began high school, we had everything in my school. We had band, chorus, we had all our athletics, we had all these kind of vocational things, wood shop, plastic, print shop, yearbook, all this stuff. But by the end of my junior year, almost all of that was gone because they were defunding the schools. They were taking more and more stuff away, little by little, taking away. Okay, so you got all these families scattered everywhere. You got babies having babies, all the young girls. You start to see a lot of the young girls getting pregnant on purpose so they can get assistance and things like that. And you just have more and more of the men leaving the homes, and this breakdown is gradual, but it's obvious. Okay, and it took a long time for a lot of families to get resettled, but then the schools get hit. And I don't know if you all may have heard, but like back in like 2012 or 2013, the mayor decides that in an attempt to fix a budget deficit in the city, he closed 50 schools, 49 elementary schools and a high school, closed them. Public schools on the south side and west side, majorly Black communities and minority communities, shut them down to pack all the kids into fewer schools because the more students a school has, the more money the city will get, So thought that was a good idea. And then in Chicago, we have police that are embedded in the schools. There's cops in public schools. So they increase the police presence in the schools. So they are arresting Black kids like crazy, like actually arresting the children. They're over policing the kids. It's basically an attack on the kids. So they've taken away their activities, they've taken away their homes, they've taken away their schools. They're taking away. This is what's happening to these kids. They're getting left with no options. So once this happens, naturally, the dropout rates went up. And after the school closings in 2013, by 2016, the murder rate in the city doubled. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to connect those dots. When you leave them with no options, this is what happens. And they still taking stuff away. Just a couple years ago, the South Chicago YMCA had to close down, and it had been open for 90 years. They still taking things from them. There was Head Start there and everything. Still taking the money away from where it needs to be. So they're left with no options. So I'm saying all this to say that there's not many things that are more dangerous than a city full of young people who feel like they don't have anything to lose. So we cannot let Tuscaloosa get to that point, and we can't be the ones to commit the bigger crime of allowing everything to get taken from them. We can't allow that. When we see it happening, we have to make noise about it. When we see it happening, we have to, even if it means we have to commit our resources, we have to keep the things alive that are keeping them off the street. Otherwise, when they are put in a position where they feel like they don't have anything to lose, you can expect all hell to break loose. So this is why Chicago is in the condition that it's in. And this is why every time somebody say Black Lives Matter, everybody be like, well, do Black Lives Matter in Chicago? Because they killing each other left and right. In Chicago, they don't have nothing else to do. Like it's I don't want to say it's part of the culture, because it isn't. There's a lot of good things happening in Chicago. There's a lot of good Black people in Chicago. There's a lot of people that are thriving in Chicago. But the marginalization and the gentrification and the people being either forced to live in certain areas or not allowed to live in certain areas. It's a very segregated city. All of these things factor in, and it's not like that everywhere. So, that people keep referring back, but it is the way it is because of these factors that I mentioned, and it is possible for other cities to get to that point, but we have to be more involved in stopping it before it does.
You couldn't hear me. That was powerful. Thank you. Brother Corey, closing statement.
By no means am I insensitive to the police shooting. Has made sound, but I'm a firm believer that just being in prior law enforcement experience, 80% of it is based off fear. You can't send someone through 16 weeks training, give them a gun and tell them, hey, go police the community. That's not the time that we are in right now. A lot of the officers, no matter where they come from, need culture awareness training for which community they're going to be in. Being that, as Cassius talked about the basketball program, that's good and dandy. Therefore, when you go to the neighborhood, you got to call. You got Johnny out there saying, hey, that's just Johnny. Come here, man. Let me talk to you right quick.
Right. They
Let me
know you.
de-escalate
Right.
that situation. That's what police departments, heads got to be more cognizant about and put those people through the training. Let them know the community. True community police. Don't talk about it. Do it. That way, if I know some problems in this community, I can go to Cass and say, hey, Cass, such and such, hey, that was Johnny, I'm down the street right over there. I got it. I go get him, bring him out here and let him talk to you. That's the type of community policing that I'm talking about. I'm not insensitive to the fact that white officers shooting just out of racism, but it has some fear in it because you come from two different worlds. And that's the only point that I want to make. I ain't gonna hold you long. This is all I want to say. But bottom line, I'm not insensitive to it, but I also look at the realistic fact behind it. And police need more realistic training. And that's where it's gonna come from. You want to train these officers, not just 16 weeks of gun in the car. It's gonna be ongoing training, continual education, not getting a computer, saying, hey, I done did my 8 hours of continual education.
Right.
I'm ready to go back on the shift. No, you got to do some real good. Make training realistic for these officers.
Yeah.
Corey, excellent. Brother Lanier.
Yeah, man. I've said enough. All I want to do is leave us with one thing, and that's that we as a community, as legislators, as federal government, as local leaders, churches, neighborhoods, etc. We all have we have a responsibility of accountability. We have a responsibility of accountability. If we as Black people in our community regain and take accountability again in our own neighborhoods, and that's coming with the parents, because charity starts at home. That's coming with them assuming responsibility and accountability for their children, for the police to assume accountability and responsibility when they're on the job, just saying, hey, let's give the benefit of the doubt. In order to not take a life, let's have a conversation. In other words, what we're doing right now is showing that we are accountable and we're ready to have a conversation. We're having it, but all I want us to do is just consider those things. And I'm gone, Brother Moderator. You did a doggone good job. You're the man for the job. Shout out to Champion Principal, my brother from way back when he was Peanut. That was my brother then, and he know what, he the Champion Principal from the West Side. Dr. Lowe, from the West Side, the county high to, listen, the boy got the best of all worlds. He done combed this whole Tuscaloosa. And he didn't do it with a silver spoon. So when I see him with his tie and all that kind of deal and doing this thing, it makes me proud that that's my brother from across the street from Sam Maddox and McKenzie. Because we all from the same area. So shout out to you. His character had to, his character had to bring this whole thing together. So I just want to tell you, I love you, Nuke, and I appreciate you. Man, listen, responsibility for and accountability. That's what our city and our government needs. Thank you, man.
Love you back, Cassius.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, good brother.
Thank you. Our young people, Brother Steve McCullough.
First off, I want to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity, especially Doctor. Thank you very much. I want to add on to what Ms. Cooper was saying about the city of Chicago. I didn't get the chance to butt in that conversation. I am from there. And, you know, a couple things regarding Chicago that I think we need to pay attention to and hope and do everything in our power to stop the city of Tuscaloosa from going into these ways is regarding, you know, as far as voting. You know, we have to vote. Our vote, you know, a lot of people say our vote doesn't count. And I can see what they mean by that, but at the same time, you know, we do vote and we do put a lot of these people in office that at the same time we complain about. What Ms. Cooper was talking about the schools and how the West Side and South Side schools were, you know, all 50, a lot of schools on the West and South Side. East Side Calumet was, you know, defunded and they ended up closing down was due to money. And, you know, everything is centered around money. I realized that just recently. The way that you hurt people, especially the politicians that are in City Hall, that are at the White House, that are at, you know, at our capitals, is you hurt them with money. And Mayor Emanuel, who was the mayor of Chicago at the time, that's where his mind was at a lot of time, and it was money. I applaud the mayor that we have now at the city in the city of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot. She's she brings tears to my eyes a lot of the time that I see her on CNN, you know, a lot of news outlets that she's on, fighting and doing her job to fight for those communities in Chicago that feel like they don't have a voice. At the same time, a lot of guns. I'm on the topic of guns now. On the topic of guns in Chicago. Chicago has strict gun laws, but at the same time, you go a good 20 miles down the road, you're in the state of Indiana, okay? And state of Indiana really doesn't have, you know, they have loose gun laws. So it's so easy for, you know, someone to meet up on the state border and you know, buy guns and, you know, kill someone with them in Chicago. So I think we have to hold people accountable for the actions that they are doing, especially our politicians. And I'm switched back to Tuscaloosa now. And with my closing statements regarding everything that we've talked about today, I believe that we can't get comfortable with the rhetoric that our politicians use, or with the rhetoric that, you know, white people use in all, whether it's Walt Maddox or our city council women or men members. We cannot get comfortable with their rhetoric. For the Miss Holmes that lives in Texas, we can't get comfortable with Governor Abbott's rhetoric, no matter what he says, no matter how he looks, or if we feel bad for him, he's in a wheelchair, fine. We can't get comfortable with rhetoric, okay? We have to have action behind every single word that is said. Another thing is we don't want to exclude the Black community from the entire area. We don't want to exclude the west side of Tuscaloosa from Tuscaloosa. That's exactly what sometimes I feel like the government wants to do. They want to exclude us. Therefore, they have, you know, we don't. That's a less amount of responsibility on their hands. So we cannot do things to exclude ourselves from the government. I understand that community is something that is close to the heart, but we must fight for it as a whole and not as just, you know, individual. A fact for you is in Tuscaloosa in 2017. Okay, this may have been a while back, but it's still important. In 2017, 100% of the murders in Tuscaloosa with a gun was committed by an African American. All right, 100% of the murders. That's every single murder with a gun in Tuscaloosa was committed by an African American. I think that is something that should catch the eye of every single one of us and the ear. And it may have shown that we, not me, because I was in high school, but anyway, but it may have shown that the politicians, whether it's Walt Maddox or our councilmen and women at the time, may have not done their job. But at the same time, we have to hold ourselves accountable, and again, we have to hold our politicians accountable. I'm not saying that we have to go to City Hall and turn that place upside down, but do not think that you're radical. Don't hold your radical to the world standard of radical. That's what I'm trying to say. Do not sit here and say, oh, no, protesting, all these things, that's a little bit too much for me, yelling, screaming. No, you're fighting for equality. You're fighting to breathe. That's how I see it. You're fighting to breathe. Just like George Floyd was fighting to breathe. That's the same thing that you're trying. You're fighting for your brother to breathe. You're fighting for your sister to breathe. So we have to change our ideals of radical, and we have to put it into terms that we're trying to breathe. We're trying to create the same amount of quality, the same amount of opportunity that, this white brother has beside me. So that's all I had to say. And again, thank you, every one of you. Words of wisdom coming from each and every one of you. And thank you for the opportunity again.
Well said, Steve. Well said.
And just for future reference, it is pronounced Stevon.
Thank you, Stevon. I stand
Yes.
corrected, sir. I stand corrected. Well spoken. Sean, last but definitely not least.
Yes. All right. I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. I want to thank you all so much for the fire and the passion that you showed about the wide variety of topics that affect the Black community so much, and that we need to focus on heavily for as long as possible until it's fixed. As a boy from Hayes Court, I've been here for over 10 years now, and will be here until I graduate. It brings me so much joy and gives me so much hope that you all are so passionate about these subjects, and that there are people who grew up in areas like Hayes Court like me who are passionate about these subjects. And I wish that other kids who don't have opportunities like myself could be here, could listen to you all fight and advocate for them, in the simplest way, which is just talking. And that's, like we've always said before, that is the beginning, and that is one of the most important first steps. And so I want to thank you all once again. It's been great. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. We were smoking tonight. This was dynamic. It was powerful. Series 4. I have a lot to say, but I won't say it for the hour. But all I will leave with you, I want to leave with each of you, Facebook Nation, all the panelists. Thank you. You did an outstanding job, panelists. It was my honor to serve as your moderator for these 4 nights. But I want to leave you with the words of the great Dr. King and his prayer. I want you to think about it because it's powerful. And I hope it will be your prayer. Prayer says, use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do, and use it for a purpose greater than myself. Champion Principal, it's been an honor. I turn it back over to you.
Excellent job, moderator. Excellent job. Hey, guys, panelists of today, panelists of all 4 days, you did an amazing job. I'm extremely proud of you guys. And how did you change the narrative? You are changing it right now. Hundreds of people saw for 4 whole days, for over 2 hours each night, and saw African Americans with different backgrounds, different beliefs going at it. And guess what? Everybody was respectful toward each other. It was the most amazing thing. That's better than what we can say about CNN and Fox News. Come on now. So this is
That's
totally
right.
amazing. So you guys are changing the narrative. You just changed it. Because most of us are sure more different than we are alike in so many ways. And you
That's
guys
true.
had this professional conversation. I'm so proud of you guys. And I'm forever grateful. My young people, I told you last night I couldn't even sleep. It was just amazing what you young people did. And your future is bright. So we're gonna be fine with people like you all.
Right.
Last thing I'm gonna say is, young people, we will continue this series. Most of the people in the audience, they want to hear from an all young person panel. So that's what we're going to do next. Next, you all will be invited for a panel, and you guys will be the moderator as well. We probably have Dr. Lowe help you out a little bit, but we're going to do that next. So be on the lookout for that. Last thing, when you look at the narrative, Black on Black crime, let me say it simply to you. This is what we should do with it, and this is what we did the last 4 days. Ball it up.
Yeah.
Throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everybody. Be blessed.
Blessings.
Bless.
Blessed.